Divine greetings, ones and zeros, zeros and ones, boys and girls that are now men and women, kings and queens, gods and goddesses, spiritual beings of this divine matrix. Welcome to this live. My name is Clay, and I decided to do a part 2 of the live that I was doing yesterday, that I did yesterday. And I'm doing part 2 of that live, labeled Transmuting Harmony. Transmuting Harmony, and this is dealing with intimacy, self-intimacy, intimacy with self before you can be intimate with anyone else. And let me see, I'm going to give a preview like I did yesterday. And yesterday I gave a preview talking about the transmuting moon. So this transmuting moon is in Capricorn, and in Capricorn there is the need to be validated by worldly experience or become an expert in worldly experience. And I have past life experience, and in all my past life experience I've done very well at being worldly. You could say at being bad, at being egoic, at being the false self. I was very well attuned to that aspect of myself. I excelled at being egoic. You could say I was successful at being egoic. So in this transmuting moon right now, what I'm challenging myself to do is to take the lessons of the past and transmute them. So instead of being egoic, to take all those lessons of the past and be intuitive, be in touch with my feminine, to be a man. In order to be a man, I see that you must be in touch with your feminine side, because feminine has to do with the receptive, and if you're not receptive, you won't be able to receive the intelligence of the divine. And as I receive the intelligence of the divine, I see that I have the instructions in how to be the best masculine man that I am. Now, going forward to what I was talking about yesterday. In yesterday's live, I talked about my mother being a covert narcissist. And as my mother is a covert narcissist, as she raised me up to be also a covert narcissist. And I took on that covert narcissistic approach to life until I was 38, where I was hit with schizophrenia. And as I was hit with schizophrenia, my world became fragmented. And it is in that fragmentation that I came to the realization through humility that I must be in tune with my intuitive nature. I must be in tune with my feminine side. I must not lie. I must tell the truth. I must speak the truth. And in so doing, since 2020, I've been on this journey of unseating the demons in the wounds and healing the wounds. And this transmuting moon is a step in me healing those wounds. And in particularly this moon, I'm healing the wound of intimacy. Now, I spoke on the guilt that I was feeling yesterday because I was protecting the motherhood wound. As I protected the motherhood wound, I was covertly using the fatherhood wound as a distraction, because I did not want to claim my masculinity. I did not want to see that that masculinity is, or the masculinity before I was 38, is the false self. And that false self gave into societal norms. That false self gave into guilting myself to receive, um, greetings in the chat, greetings. Guilting myself to receive um, accolades from others. And I'm seeing that that is not the way to go about things. Because when you guilt yourself, then you will project that guilt onto others. And others will also do the same unto you. As you give, they will take, and as they take, they will return to you. They will reciprocate the bad vibes that you're giving them. So I'm making this choice to not reciprocate bad vibes. I'm making that choice not to deal in the false self. And as I am a spiritual being having a human experience, this is how it is that I am healing the wounds of narcissism. I'm healing the wounds of colonialism. I'm healing the wounds of childhood trauma. I'm healing the wounds of generational trauma. I'm healing the wounds of ancestral trauma. And I'm healing the wounds of cosmic trauma. Now, to go forward, to be specific about the topic tonight, which is intimacy. I was seeing, and give me a moment, let me take a moment to breathe. So tonight, I had another breakthrough in my transmutation, in my manifestation and transmutation, manifestation and transmutation, manifestation and transmutation, transmutation and manifestation. As I'm harmonizing and balancing the receptive nature with the creative nature, with the feminine nature with the masculine nature, with the intuitive nature with the ego, the divine ego nature. As I'm doing that, I'm reminded that the flow of energy through my sacral chakra is routed through one of two portals. It's either it's going to be guilt or it's going to be pleasure. And as it goes through the solar plexus chakra, it's either going to be shame or it's going to be willpower, divine willpower. And as it is in the heart, it's either going to be grieving or understanding. And to continue, I'm working on intimacy. And as I'm working on that intimacy, the thing in particular that I am seeing is that I was suffering from the guilt of the motherhood wound. And as I was suffering from the guilt of the motherhood wound, I was operating out of shame. And I was not able to behave or to be in a willful way as a man. I was pretending to be a man. I was in the false self. And that hurt in every area of my life. It hurt in the area of me being a father. It hurt in the area of me being a brother. It hurt in the area of me being a partner. It hurt in the area of me respecting the feminine, respecting females, whether it is a daughter, a sister, a mother, a partner, a wife. It hurt in all these different areas. because my perception was warped. I was living for the false self. I was living for the false self, and as a result of me taking the stance yesterday to no longer live for the false self as it relates to anything, and in particularly intimacy, I'm sharing this message. So I encountered the shame, and in encountering the shame, I felt a certain sense of dis-ease in my mind, and that dis-ease in my mind reminded me of the maddening feeling of schizophrenia. It gave me a sense of confusion, and it gave me a sense of confusion. I knew I had to get rid of it, and in getting rid of it, this is what I'm authenticating as I speak freely in this live. There is a moment in life where things become known from the unknown. And one of those things that I'm seeing that is happening right now as we speak is that I'm being more in tune with my feminine nature, which is my receptive nature. And as such, I'm learning my body, so to speak. I'm learning to understand that there is pretty much how I've received the information in my body. There's three aspects of self. There's the spiritual self, the soul self, and the physical self. And the physical self is the least important. The physical self, you could say, the physical self is the most egoic self. As the physical self is the most egoic self, I want to be in that physical self, in that physical nature, the least as possible, because that is going to foster the ego. And as I foster the ego, I'm being false. I'm actually being demonic. And so it is that it ties into the motherhood wound of guilt. Because in society, I'm learning that society has certain expectations of what a man is supposed to be, of what a brother is supposed to be, of what a husband is supposed to be, of what a son is supposed to be. And as I have defied those expectations on all fronts, I am seeing that people will look at you weird. People will look at you weird. And I had to face that challenge that the false self did not want to face. The false self did not want to face that it is a unique being. And when I talk about the false self, I'm not talking about the false self because the false self, I did not choose the false self. It is I who chose the false self. And in choosing the false self, I also can choose to put away the false self. And that is what I am doing, because the false self, the egoic self, the demonic self is not worthwhile living. The demonic self has no feelings, it has no emotions. It is the true self that has the feelings. And in the true self, or of the true self, there is the spiritual self, the soul self, and the physical self. And of the true self, the physical self matters the least. The physical self is the one who actually has the feeling. And the soul self has to respect the physical self, as the soul self has to respect the spiritual self. The spiritual self is the perfect self. The soul self is the imperfect self. And in the event or in the arrangement of the soul being the perfect, then the physical becomes the imperfect. So that is the nature of that arrangement as it relates to order. Now, I'm pointing to the truth that the physical self is the least important, and as such, we as human beings, we give over unto the false self because of feelings, because of hurt feelings. So what I am saying is that when you have hurt feelings, when you have pain, it is for us to understand that that pain is a symptom of something, and not to give into that pain. The moment you give into that pain, you give into the false self, you give into the demonic self, because now you're going to want to protect that pain, when in actuality that pain is simply a symptom and to be looked at as actually pleasure, because that pain is there to show you the truth of what it is that you're experiencing. As you learn the truth of what it is that you are experiencing, that is pleasure, and the egoic self does not want to admit that, because the moment you admit that, the ego dies. The ego has no hold, the ego has no control. And when I say the ego here, I'm talking about the egoic self, the demonic ego rather than the divine ego. Because the divine ego operates in absolute humility. The divine ego operates in absolute humility. The divine ego takes no accreditation, because there is no accreditation to be taken. Everything is accredited to the divine. We all know this as human beings. We all know that there is a divine order. And as you align yourself with the divine order, you yourself are divine, and there is no need for accolades. So when you see a person suffering from guilt, as I was suffering from guilt, and as a result of suffering from the guilt, you're going to perform shameful actions as opposed to divine actions. You're going to, as you suffer injustice, or as you impose injustice upon yourself, you are going to be out of harmony. And as you are out of harmony in your solar plexus, you're going to be imbalanced in your heart. You're going to suffer from grief. So I'm here in this, tomorrow is the Capricorn full moon. So I'm here in this transmuting moon to transmute intimacy in harmony and balance and in justice and with justice for myself and in this conversation that I'm having. Because what in this justice that I'm having right now, what I'm doing is, while I'm sharing this, and it is a pleasure to share it, I'm also doing this to watch the live that I'm transmuting, to see and search my soul as I'm being very vulnerable on this channel. So I broadcast these messages and then I re-watch them myself to see what the message is, as the message is for others, and first and foremost it is for myself. I'm being intimate with myself. I'm talking to myself. I'm looking at myself in admiration. And as I'm looking at myself in admiration, I'm trusting that you're looking at yourself with admiration. And you're looking at me with admiration, as I'm looking at you in admiration. And if anyone comes into the chat or watches this later on, leave me a comment and I will answer the comment. And I accept comments that are well-hearted, well-to-do comments. Comments about spirituality. What is spirituality? Spirituality is giving over yourself unto yourself, which is yourself is the divine. And I'm going to take a moment here to breathe and listen inwardly. So, to continue the message, as I was transmuting the shame that I was feeling for not being true, not being authentic, I went through a series of somatic therapy with myself where I witnessed the energy of the false self die. And as I witnessed the energy of the false self die, the egoic death, I felt it in my solar plexus. And as I felt it in my solar plexus, it traveled into my heart. And as it traveled into my heart, it traveled through the order of my throat chakra and out my mouth. I breathed the filth of the false self out. And that triggered a series of somatic responses by the body, because the body is intelligent and knows how to get rid of filth. One of the examples of this is that you consume, and while you do not entirely know as a brain function how exactly that food is digested, and even scientific knowledge leaves room for the unknown. The intelligence of the body is perfect. The intelligence of the body can be perfect, I should say. Not is perfect. It can be perfect in its acceptance and allowance of what it is that is to remain in the body to build the body, and what it is to pass through the body to be defecated and put into another place of deterioration, as it is recycled into further nutrients for other beings, other organic beings. So that is the beauty of intelligence that I was witnessing as I experienced the egoic death. The somatic therapy that I witnessed in the body. I felt the chills, I felt the churning in the sacral chakra, I felt the chills in the skin, I felt the release in the crown chakra of the egoic self. And as I felt this, I was assured by my spirit that this is the process of egoic death. So, in talking about the process of egoic death, I see that it is something that is not to be afraid of. So, I'm speaking to the lower self as I'm saying this. I'm speaking to my lower self, I'm speaking to your lower self, should you be inclined to accept what it is that I am saying, to assure the lower self that egoic death is a pleasure. It's a pleasure to have an egoic death. It may be registered in the brain as hurt. However, it is for us as human beings, having being spiritual, to allow the humility of intelligence to correct that thinking, and so see pain as something pleasurable, and not in a, would I say, a freaky deaky way. No, not in a SMN kind of way. I think that's the terminology. It's in not in a perverted kind of way, in a mature spiritual kind of way, right? So to continue, the crux of what it is that I am transmuting in this part 2 of the intimacy episode is getting intimate with my spirit, soul, and body. So in seeing that I have a spirit, a soul, and a body, ultimately the spirit rules everything, and I want to be as much in the spirit as I can. However, there are times when it is more conducive to be in the soul, and there are times when it is more conducive to be in the body. At a minimum, I'm a soul man. So I'm here in 5D, in the fifth dimension, in the love frequency, having a soulful experience. And in having that soulful experience, I'm seeing the joy of knowing thyself, the joy of having put pain aside, pain in the mind, pain in the soul, pain that is registered in the soul, having cleared my throat chakra, having cleared my third eye chakra, having cleared those are the ones that I have cleared, my throat chakra, my third eye chakra, at least in this moment. Having clearing my solar plexus chakra, having cleared my heart chakra, having clearing my sacral chakra, and having clearing my root chakra, as I expand my awareness in the earth star chakra and allow my divine will to flow through my crown and to the ground and back again. So now, is there something else that I want to speak on? Yes. Okay. The task of being a man. One of the things that came up for me recently is the task of being a man. I recognize that a man, in a man and woman relationship, a man is the initiator. A man is the initiator both in being a cardinal or being the one who starts things and being the one who finishes. He's more of a initiator. And then the woman is more of the carrier, the mutable aspect of the relationship. And in communion with each other, the woman also has her masculinity, which she also has to exercise the cardinal aspect and the fixed aspect, which is the beginning and the end aspect. So it is for the man to initiate to the woman to that he is interested in the woman, and for the woman to receive the man, and so be the relationship starts, right? If you start the relationship in another way where the woman initiates, then that is a form of perversion. That is my observation, because the woman is receiving and the man is projecting. So the man projects and the woman receives. And as the man projects and the woman receives, then as the woman receives and incubates and then reciprocates, then the man receives and the woman projects, and there's kind of a seesaw type of relationship. The important thing is that the initial starting of the relationship, the initial interest of the relationship has to be from the male perspective to the female perspective, because that is the order. When you do it the other way, then you are out of order, and that out of orderness has to be corrected, because that is a form of perversion. And if that is not corrected in the relationship, then you're forever going to have to deal with the falsity of how the relationship began. And therefore, you're going to have a false self being fed somewhere in the relationship. And in my case, where the relationship started out properly, I had a false self, and as a result, deteriorated the relationship to the point where it broke off, and then my partner received me again, and so we're in a relationship again. And this has happened a few times, and now we're in a more stable relationship. The important thing I'm pointing out here is that the man initiates and the woman receives that initiation. And as the woman receives that initiation, she incubates it and returns that initiation to the man, and the man receives it, and there's a harmony and a balance that always has to be kept. And this is the same thing that takes place in the family dynamics, because when the father is introduced to the child, it is the father who had initiated putting this child into the mother, the mother who received the child and then incubates it and returns it to the father. So then the father and the child has that established relationship in the divine union. So everyone has this type of relationship. There's no question, there's no doubt. And I do believe that that is where I'm going to leave it. This solar plexus moon day. It's a solar plexus sacral moon day for me. And I appreciate all who joined in or stopped in for a moment, and all those who would look in from time to time. And this is where I say Ashe and Amen.